So a very warm welcome to Christian Becker-Hussong, Head of IR of MunichRE. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Let me start first of all by congratulating you to the fantastic achievement in the Europe Executive Team Survey 2020, where you did position in overall third place. What a fantastic achievement. Share with us your views on the awards, what they mean to you, what they mean to management.
Yeah, thanks. The award certainly is the most important in the IR industry, IR world. It is certainly the one which is the most well-known, also because it is not just about investor relations, but it is also about ranking all the individuals we work with on a daily basis, which means the analyst community as well as investors. So they all take it quite seriously, rightly so. And as long as there is a competition and a ranking, you want to score highly. So it is, of course, important to us. Is it the only benchmark we use? Of course not. Is just one ranking, one award telling you everything? No, it isn't, but it is a very important benchmark. And management is looking at it. Why? Simply speaking, because how do you measure investor relations contribution to the overall value creation of a company? There's not so much you can do from a management standpoint if you want to know whether your IR team performs or not. So there's automatically lots of focus on these rankings and benchmarks. From my point of view, a bit too much, but it is what it is. And therefore, we take it seriously. On top, of course, we depend a lot on informal feedback we keep getting from investors and analysts, which is also very, very important. But no doubt, the award is an important tool for us. Also, when it gets to what can we do in order to further improve what we do as investor relations team, and what can we learn from others?
We've obviously all gone through an unprecedented period over the last year. How have you dealt with the crisis in terms of IR and the efforts that you're putting together?
Yeah, it's an ongoing situation. It keeps developing, it keeps evolving, it keeps changing. Of course, as a reinsurer, we are used to large catastrophes. This is our business, believe it or not. So for us, it was per se not entirely different to what we have seen before. But what was different and what still is different, it was pretty clear from the beginning of the process that there would be a quite substantial financial impact on us as a company and as an industry as a whole. What is unusual, and this is what we were not used to, is that this event is, or it's not one event, it's just an ever-changing situation, which just has one root cause. And the uncertainty, however, will reduce over time. And we keep seeing this, of course. So our investor relations work is a bit back to normal again, I would say. We are all used to the situation. We have all managed it as investor relations teams, as analysts, as investors. We hope that at least in the second half of the year, this normalization of the entire situation will have an even bigger impact on our work. And we can again continue to concentrate on the fundamentals of our business and talk to people about future prospects and not so much about the current crisis situation any longer.
Yeah, very good. So remaining agile is obviously really important throughout the process. Yep. And I think we've also gone through a very rapid adoption of technology. How have you incorporated digitization in your IR work to make your processes or your structures more efficient?
From my point of view, sometimes overly strong focus on what does digitization mean to us in investor relations. I think at the end of the day, investor relations really, fortunately, is people's business. And I'm very grateful that this will never, ever change. I'm absolutely convinced. However, digitization can help to make our lives a bit easier here and there. Although the nature of the conversation will be a pretty traditional one also going forward. I'm absolutely certain that all of us are pretty happy that we will not only depend on the digital platforms when communicating with each other going forward. There will be a much stronger element of physical interaction again. I'm very, very much looking forward to that. And I think this is something we all miss out on at this point in time. We all miss sitting together, looking into each other's face, and really acting as normal human beings with each other sitting in one room. And therefore, I think it will be an interesting mixture of alternative ways to communicate with each other going forward. Aside from those video conferences, which is a nice add-on because it's much easier now to talk to people who are in remote places. People in Asia, in the somewhere in the US where you don't travel that often. It's a big beneficial feature, no doubt. But aside from that, I think the digital backbone of the investor relations work, I can clearly say that for my department and for my company, it's not super sophisticated. We have not reinvented the wheel. What we do is we do have a proper database. We have, of course, a very good overview on our shareholder base, not only shareholders, actual shareholders, but former shareholders, future potential shareholders. We keep monitoring our interaction with shareholders on a very regular basis, which we use these instruments in order to make sure that we interact at least with 4 times a year with all our top 100, let's say, potential or actual shareholders. And we keep track of that, and we try to make sure they get regular access to management. We make sure that we approach them on a regular basis in order to make them really comfortable with the investment case on an ongoing basis. But I would consider this to be rather groundwork. I can't really say. I would love to present you a super story of how have we already applied artificial intelligence or whatever in our daily work. This is simply not the case at this point. Maybe I'm too old for all this fancy stuff, but I'm so deeply convinced that just talking to people in whichever way, on whichever platform, it remains the very core of what we will do also going forward.
Yes, very much agreed. It is a people's business after all. So it's definitely the case. Obviously, ESG is something that has been growing of importance over the last few years. I think in the pandemic, it's seen an increase in its momentum as well and became center stage. How do you engage with regards to ESG investors, the events that you're putting or activities that you're putting together? And how do you find alignment with investors to reduce the greenwashing, if you like?
It's a journey, and a journey that has, as you just said, massively accelerated. And yes, the pandemic was an accelerator. I'm very happy that we can say that at MunichRE and my team, we were not unprepared because ESG, or features of it, bigger parts of it, have for many, many years been part of our company, of my company. Specifically, just to give you one example, when it gets to climate research, climate change, this has always been part of our offering, not only to customers, but to the society. And many, many other things we engaged on as a company very early on, because as an insurance company, if you need to indemnify claims, you have a major interest to prevent claims in the first place. And therefore, ESG, ecological developments, all those green topics, if I may say so, they have been part of our business considerations at a very early stage. Therefore, for us as an IR team, we simply had no other choice than to start to deal with it many years ago. And I can say that quite a few years ago, we have already started with actively communicating on ESG topics with our investor community. We have organized our first ESG Investor Day, I think 6 or 7 years ago. We have continued to intensify this over the past years. We have gone on specific roadshows. We have engaged with our internal ESG colleagues, with our climate research colleagues, and talked to investors proactively in order to strengthen our footprint in this area and to create a credible story, making it part of our overall equity story. Therefore, this acceleration, which we have just which we continue to see, but which has more or less started with the beginning of the pandemic, this was something which was not a game changer for us as a company and as a team, fortunately, but it remains even stronger going forward, a real paradigm shift also for the way all of us will be doing investor relations. It will keep us on our toes. It's a very diverse kind of challenge, because you have so many different investors being interested in so many different topics. You have so many different reporting requirements. It's extremely difficult to structure this and to get your head around what to do next and how to best meet the expectations of investors. And I think we are just at the very beginning of this journey as a society, and of course as companies. And investor relations can play a very important role and can be a major facilitator, an accelerator, a driver of this process. And this is extremely interesting, I would say, but challenging at the same time.
Yes, definitely. It has to become part of the company's DNA. I think that's very important.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I can safely say for my company, this is the case, which makes our work a lot easier, because it's not just a contrived kind of new development. It is really a genuine kind of dealing with this topic, also as far as our management, supervisory board, and so on is concerned. And still, we do see a bit of a divide, I think, as far as the ESG topic is concerned, because on the one hand, you have the E and S topics, so the more green topics, the social topics. As far as investors are concerned, they do have dedicated teams for this part. And there still is a certain separation of those topics from the G topic, from the governance topic, which is quite an important one as well, especially when we think about shareholder meetings and certain requirements of our investors. When it gets to governance topics, people are very outspoken when they come to our shareholders meeting. They want to make sure that good governance is being obeyed to. And therefore, we keep talking to investors on these issues also for many years now, and we will do so going forward to an increasing extent. I'm absolutely certain, and this is going to be the case for all investor relations teams.
Yes, very much agreed. And we're seeing a lot of companies actually doing specific governance roadshows with the chairman.
We do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. We've recently actually conducted a poll with corporates and investors to understand what the market sentiment is with regards to activism. And we understand from investors that there is an increase expected over the next 6 to 12 months. Corporates, on the other hand, don't seem to have a strategy or a plan in their back pocket to potentially mitigate the risk. Is activism an opportunity or a risk? Where do you stand, Christian?
Many years back, we used to have some experience with activism, but we managed the situation, I think, over a couple of years, eventually quite successfully. And why did we do that? Or how could we achieve that? And I think, therefore, I find this discussion a bit awkward. It sounds like as a company, you need to have a plan A, which is the business plan you have communicated to your stakeholders. And then you should probably have a plan B in case plan A doesn't work, if you want to keep the evil activist out. And to me, that sounds a bit artificial. I can simply say, I think if you as a company have a convincing strategy, and if you continue without too big exceptions to deliver on your financial targets, activism has no place. Because then you have your stakeholders on board. Your stakeholders will be more or less happy with what you do, and you have all your arguments, all the right arguments on your side. And I think, why would an activist not be happy with that? To the extent there are shortfalls as far as your financial delivery is concerned, to the extent your strategy does not resonate with your stakeholders, to the extent your strategy is simply not consistent, you change it too often, to the extent you change management teams too often, that creates awareness. And then sometimes there is something below the surface. As long as this is not the case, I think there's no reason to be afraid of activism. And therefore, it is for us not a major topic we deal with on a daily basis. Can it become a topic? Potentially, yes. But I think having a good strategy in place and having convincing answers, I think, is the best protection you can simply have.
Where do you see, I mean, we've talked a little bit about ESG and activism and IR digitization. These are obviously big trends in investor relations that has impact on the function and how you actually strategically roll it out. But where do you see additional trends for the future in IR that could shape the landscape significantly?
I think what we currently experience, and this is somewhat overshadowed by the COVID-19 development, is clearly the fact that MiFID II has quite an impact on the industry. And we have been talking about this for quite a few years without anything happening. And therefore, I think it is, or it will become increasingly clear. There's a new balance of power, I think, going to be found moving ahead between the sell side, the buy side, and investor relations. And my job, as far as I can remember, and we keep talking about this, is called investor relations and not analyst relations. Although analysts were and still are the people we deal with most and which we deal with on a daily basis, and they consume most of our time and we most of their time probably. So I think it is to a large extent a conversation with analysts we keep having. And what is important to us is that we get simply closer to our investors without always having the sell side in between us. We have no problem with the sell side whatsoever. That is pretty clear. But we just want to make sure that investors can have direct access to investor relations whenever they want. And I think it will always remain a mixture between who do you talk to as an investor? Is it the analyst or is it the company itself? And who is it in the company? And I think investors get most out of the investment case if they talk to various stakeholders. And therefore, the analyst community will always be extremely important. But to find a better balance between who to talk to, who to listen to, and what kind of information to get from whom, I think that will be more important from an investor point of view. And therefore, to establish a closer direct contact with investors is going to be increasingly important. Try to access and to engage with investors proactively, talk to them, try to find out whether they are comfortable with the investment case, try to learn from them. Are there any issues? Why don't they call you more often? Is there anything you can help them with? Is there any fundamental misunderstanding maybe? Or is there something they just miss out on? Is there any piece of information? Is there any kind of communication format they would prefer in order to get closer to us. And I think this proactive engagement, it's a challenge because not every investor will respond because they just have so much on their plate. But if you at least try to be upfront with them, I think they will recognize and will reward this kind of proactive behavior.
Yes, definitely. Obviously, Christian, you've been in IR for a long time, in different companies as well. Where do you see the absolute must-haves in terms of IR structure or skill set that you need to have to deliver such a successful IR program?
It's yourself. It's the head of investor relations. It's the investor relations team, which is of equal importance, I would say. Make sure it's the entire team who has a strong reputation with the capital market. And at the end of the day, it's, as mentioned various times before, it's a people's business. It's you as a person making the difference. Anybody can be smart. Anybody can know the fundamentals of the company. Anybody has to be able to talk about the industry in detail. So you simply have to be a knowledgeable person. But that is not rocket science, I would say. That is a given. You as a person need to make the big difference. You have a super important and interesting role. You are your investor's lawyer versus your management and the other way around. So you are right in the middle, and it's your job to properly match the expectations and the level of information both parties have. And it's your job to give a proper interpretation to the capital market. You have to be a credible person, an honest person. You have to provide transparency and leave people alone with any marketing blah blah. Yeah? They don't want to hear the story. They want to hear the story behind the story. There always is a story behind the story. Not that this story would be totally different, but to help people to even better understand the story, to read between the lines. That is where you can really create value.
Yes. Definitely. Investor relations as a storyteller function. I think I would totally agree with that. Christian, we're going to switch gear now. I hope you don't mind. We have a few lighter-hearted questions for you. I hope you play along. The first one is, name a historic figure, please, that you would like to meet, and what would you ask them?
I don't think about these questions a lot, to be honest. Because I'm a big fan of the Alps, I would like to meet Hannibal, and of course a person I never had a chance to meet with because he died long time before Jesus Christ was born, but nevertheless must have been a super impressive person because he dared to stand up to the Roman Empire. And I would like to ask him, how did he manage to take more than 30 elephants across the Alps? How does this work from a logistical point of view? And how did he motivate these animals to do this crazy trip?
Very good. Do you have a favorite singer, musician, or a band that you like?
Not really. I'm not a teenager anymore, unfortunately. So this is not really on top of my mind any longer. If you just ask me for one singer who impresses me, it's definitely Max Rabe, a German singer, singing songs from the 1920s in a very ironic, sometimes sarcastic way. And this is something I like a lot because I like the quite intelligent humor in these songs.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite quote from a movie that you use on a regular basis?
I actually have. And I was surprised that I have it. And I keep saying to myself and to my team, whenever we send out something, whenever there's an earnings release, whenever we send out press releases with updating people with strategic projects or whatever, whenever I'm not certain what will really happen, I keep saying, may the force be with us. which is of course taken from the famous movie Star Wars, and it's a bit of an adaptation because the original quote is "May the Force be with you," but in this case it has to be with us, and I keep saying this. I don't know why, it just happened.
Yeah, it's a very good one. And do you have a favorite board game that you play, or how do you relax on a day off?
I can't stand board games. I really don't like them. And I always try to avoid it. Fortunately, my kids are grown up now. They are in their early 20s, and they don't play board games either. So this is not part of what I need to do any longer.